Okay. So if everybody can see my screen right now. CALDO is a consortium of 10 of the top research universities in Canada. The CALDO member universities include the University of Alberta, University of Calgary, Dalhousie University, Université Laval, McMaster University, the University of Ottawa, University of Saskatchewan, the University of Toronto, University of Waterloo, as well as Western University. So CALDO is your gateway to the top Canadian universities that offer high-ranked programs in both English and French to students from all over Latin America. We collaborate with funding agencies in Latin America to negotiate agreements for scholarships, in particular master's and PhD scholarships for graduate programs in Canada at one of the 10 member universities. The services that we offer are for graduate students that are seeking scholarships. And we offer assistance in finding the graduate programs that they are interested in at the CALDO member universities based on their interest. We also provide step-by-step information on preparing your application, the documents that you will need to gather, as well as the requirements for each of the programs. We also offer information on the different scholarships that are offered to students from specific countries, the steps to apply. We provide information on how to prepare a strong graduate application. So for example, how to contact research supervisors, how to write your academic CV, where you can find information on specific supervisors depending on the program, as well as information on language testing and the language schools at each of the CALDO member universities. Our website provides information on the steps to apply. So the first step being finding your program. The second step is identifying which scholarship would be applicable for your program of study. In the majority of the cases, the scholarship applications require letters of admission. So the first step is therefore to find the graduate program and then apply to the university. And once you've got your letter of admission, prepare all of the documents to present your application for the scholarship. Our website also includes a new contact page where you can fill out the short form with the information that you're requesting, and we will get back to you within 2 to 3 days to begin the process of supporting you and identifying the different programs that are in line with your research interests. So now this was just a quick overview of CALDO and the services that we offer. We do invite you to get in touch with us via our website. So you have here the contact information, www.caldo.ca/contact. We are also on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, as well as on YouTube, where you can find all of the recordings of our previous webinars, as well as the recordings of this at the end of this webinar will also be uploaded to the YouTube channel. So I now will invite Kyle to begin his presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, Marie-Ève. Hello, everyone. My name is Kyle, and I work at the International Office of the University of Ottawa. I'm going to share my slides in just a moment. However, today, of all days, my internet is being a little bit slow. So during my presentation, I'm going to turn off my camera just to try and give you the most understandable presentation. So I will turn my camera on at the end to answer your questions so you can see I'm a real person. But for the moment, in the sake of internet connection, I'm going to turn off my video. Okay, so as I mentioned, I work at the international office of the University of Ottawa. The University of Ottawa is in the city of Ottawa, as you might gather from the name, and it is a member of CALDO, as Marie-Ève was saying. Oops. So first of all, the University of Ottawa is a research-intensive university. It is a member of the U15 group in Canada. These are the top research institutions in the country. And so a lot of our work, especially at the graduate level, is focused very much on research. And you, depending on your program, you will have the opportunity to be doing some real world-class cutting-edge research. The University of Ottawa, being right downtown in Ottawa, it is quite an old university by Canadian standards. It's quite large as well, and it carries with it a certain amount of prestige and recognition. So if you were to obtain a degree from the University of Ottawa, whether you choose to stay in Ottawa, stay in Canada, or go somewhere else, back to your home country, or even another country around the world, after your degree from the University of Ottawa will hold you in good stead. It really opens doors and allows you to further your career wherever that may take you. While you are at the University of Ottawa, we do make sure that you have the resources you need to succeed. We are investing in new infrastructure, allowing you to have places to work, to do research, and also making sure that if you are doing research, you have the lab space, you have the tools and support necessary for you to be successful. Of course, life is not just about being successful academically in the classrooms. The university is quite large, and there are a lot of opportunities for you to get involved with extracurricular activities. If you're interested in learning ice hockey, you are very welcome to take some classes and learn a little bit about it. Of course, if that is not something you're interested in, that is not a problem either. There are hundreds of clubs really around campus that allow you to get involved in whatever type of activity might be interesting to you. Internationalization is very important at the University of Ottawa. We have students from around the world, and there are a lot of activities that are done on campus normally that allow people to share their culture and learn about the culture of other people, both sharing and learning about Canadian culture, of course, but the cultures of the students from the countries around the world that are represented at the University of Ottawa. And then the University of Ottawa, as I've mentioned, is located right downtown in the center of Ottawa, and it does afford a very good quality of life during your studies. Downtown, you can usually walk to most places you would need to go. Provided with a transit pass, so you have the option to big enough that you will find a lot of services and things that you might be looking for, but it's not gigantic. I don't think it's an overwhelming city. So it does give you a good place to live, have a good quality of life while you are completing your degree. It is in the capital city of Canada. As, for those of you who were not aware, Ottawa is the capital city. The capital of Canada is not Toronto or Montreal or Vancouver, as sometimes is the mistake, but it is in the capital city. On your screen, you can see Canada's national parliament. And you can see that from the campus of the University of Ottawa. So we are walking distance from the center of Canada's government, and you will be living and studying in a G7 capital, which means that it's a great place to really build up some connections, build your professional network so that you can have those connections wherever you end up with your future career. And finally, with all of this, all the support services, all the resources, the location, the quality of education, it all comes together with this idea that we do want to make sure that you as a student at the University of Ottawa, that you are successful academically, professionally, and personally. very quickly, I'd like to point out where Ottawa is. Hopefully all of you are aware of where Canada is. It's pretty large geographically and a little bit hard to miss on a world map. But zooming in a little bit, kind of further to the east is where you will find Ottawa. And then some well-known cities that are major cities that are near, not so far from Ottawa. You'll see Toronto a little bit to the southwest, Montreal to the east of Ottawa, and then south you will find New York City. And so these are not, yes, they are hundreds of kilometers away, but given the grand size of North America, these distances are considered relatively near. And a lot of students are able to go to these cities for weekend trips. It is possible to take a night bus from Ottawa down to New York City if you want to go for a weekend. That is very much within the reach from Ottawa. I find that it is very nice and convenient because you have the benefit of a smaller city, about 1 million people, but you have very large cities like Toronto and New York City within pretty easy reach. So you have access to a lot of different centers in North America. So at a glance, University of Ottawa is fairly large by Canadian standards, but notably, it is the world's largest French-English bilingual university. That means that the majority of our programs are offered in English and in French. But a very important point, you are not obligated to speak both. Many students only study in English, or some students only study in French. It's really, the choice is yours. A couple of our programs are bilingual that require both languages, but for the vast majority of our programs, you can choose only one language. Of course, if you want to use both languages, you can, and we can help you learn your third or maybe even fourth language. If you already speak English and you're ready to start your master's degree or PhD in English, and during your studies, you would like to learn French, we can help you. You can take additional French language classes for free, provided you get permission from your supervisor and department. But this is one way that we can help you develop these additional language skills, making you more global and more competitive in an international marketplace. Ranking-wise, depending on the ranking system you use, we could fall in different places. Every ranking system has different methodology, but we are consistently in the top 2% of universities worldwide. So again, this comes back to the idea that you will get prestige and recognition associated with your degree from the University of Ottawa. We have about a little over 43,000 students now. Again, in Canada, we consider that a very large university. I know in some of your countries, you come from places where some universities are much larger than this. So perhaps we're not large by your country's standards, but in Canada, we are one of the larger ones. And we are well over 14% international at this point. So international students really make up a strong element of the flavor of our campus. As I've mentioned, research is very important to the University of Ottawa, and research takes place in many, many different fields, many, many different disciplines, but we have structured them generally and how we are shaping the digital world. We are working to advancing just societies. That is a very big issue right now with all the protests going on. This contributes to this research and dialogue regarding race and other social justice issues. And finally, health is very important for the University of Ottawa as well. And a lot of our research does focus on supporting health and lifelong wellness. We do have 9 faculties, which you'll see on the screen. This is a general way that we divide up the programs and the structure of the university. And you will find different programs within different faculties. I do recommend that you do not limit yourself to focusing on one faculty, however, when you are looking for programs. Many of our programs will have classes in different faculties, and you may find that the program you are looking for is not in the faculty where you might expect. To give you an example, I know many students, when they're looking for economics, they immediately think to look in our Telfer School of Management, our business faculty. That might be a logical assumption. However, for us, economics is located in the Faculty of Social Sciences. So that just gives you an idea of that not everything is immediately in one clear faculty. So I do recommend that you take the time to explore the different options in faculties that may not be immediately obvious to you. So before I get into too many details about the process, I did want to address the current context we are all living around the world with COVID-19. I can imagine that many of you would have questions and are wondering how might this affect studies and how this might affect your admissions applications. So to give you an update on what we are living right now at the University of Ottawa, as of March 16th, the university was effectively closed physically. I, as an employee, have been working at home ever since March 16th. All of our classes were moved to a distance learning format. So no one was attending classes in the buildings as of March 16th. And this is how we're continuing for the time being. However, we are working on plans on how we will gradually start to reintroduce in-person activities. As I keep saying, we are a research-intensive university, so our top priority is getting people back into their laboratories. For many research activities, it's not possible to do this at home. Certainly, if you're doing medical experiments, you're working with hazardous chemicals, this is not something you're going to be doing in your kitchen. It is important to have laboratories, and so that is our priority. And as we start to work out our plans, we will be having more and more activities back in person on campus as it becomes safe. One distinction I do want to highlight to you is this distinction between online learning versus distance learning. In many cases, these two words are used to mean the same thing. However, when we are at the University of Ottawa, when we are talking about our learning activities, we do have a little bit of a distinction. Online learning is meant to be these activities that are designed from the beginning to be taught online. Distance learning is simply the idea that existing classes are moved to a video format. So at the end of last semester, when the in-person classes were suddenly canceled and they moved to video, this was a distance learning shift. So when you are looking at information from the University of Ottawa, I did want to highlight this difference to you just so that you know what you're looking at when you are reading about distance learning opportunities. So that gives you a little overview of what's going on. We are continuing to admit students. We are continuing to process admissions applications as normal. Fortunately, the internet has been very, very helpful in all of this, and a lot of our officers and a lot of the work is able to continue uninterrupted despite the physical buildings being closed. So at this point, I am going to go through some of the details of the admissions procedure. So right at the very beginning, I would like to emphasize that every program, every master's degree and every PhD has their own specific admission requirements. This means that I cannot tell you one set of requirements that will apply to any program you might be interested in. So it is very important that you check the requirements for the specific program you are interested in. This being said, there are some general guidelines I can give you, but just know these do not guarantee that you will be admitted. So as you will see on your screen, if you are applying to a master's degree, generally speaking, you will need to already have a university degree. So this is a bachelor's degree, another form of undergraduate degree. Normally this is 4 years of university study done in your home country, in Canada, or in another country. And you should have roughly a B average, or a kind of a 7 out of 10, 70% average on your results from your master's degree. This will be you will need a B or 70% average on your results from your bachelor's degree in order to be considered for admission to a master's degree. If you are interested in a PhD, you must have already completed a research-based master's degree. This is very important. If you have completed a master's degree that was only classes, there was no research, unfortunately, that will not allow you to be admissible to a PhD program. You must have some research experience before you can be admitted to a PhD program. Generally speaking, you will need about a B+ average or 8 out of 10, 75% average for your results from your research-based master's degree in order to be considered for a PhD. Just as the admission requirements for each program will be different, the application deadline for every program will be different. Generally speaking, I would say that programs in the arts, social sciences, humanities, law, these types of programs, those deadlines tend to be a little bit earlier. They can be as early as December, the year before you want to start. So if you wish to start, for example, in September 2021, the deadline for some of our programs will be as early as December 2020. On the other hand, for some programs, usually some of the STEM technical focused programs, engineering, sciences, medicine, there's a little bit of a delay, so to speak, or you can apply later, generally, for those programs. Usually those programs, the deadline is around March or April in order to be admitted the following September. So for example, if you wanted to be admitted to a PhD in epidemiology in September 2021, the admission deadline would likely be around March or April 2020, or 2021. All right. And finally, if you're wondering how your degree and your results more or less line up with these results you see on your screen, there is a URL, a web link on your screen right now. That is where you can go and search by country. So you can look up your country to see what does a B average mean in your university system structure. So you can, sometimes the systems do not translate exactly. So we do have this database that gives you an idea of how we will view the grades and results from a degree in any given country. So as you can well imagine, there are language requirements for all of our programs. It would be either English or French. It's not necessary to do both for most programs. To give you an example of a bilingual program, our PhD program in political science. If you want to do a PhD in political science at the University of Ottawa, you must speak English and French. However, most other programs, if you want to do chemical engineering, for example, if you want to do law, no, you can do just English, that's okay. Or just French if you want. Very important, we accept many different types of tests. However, we only need one. So this means that we accept the IELTS, we accept TOEFL, we accept Pearson, we accept Cambridge, we accept quite a few different language tests, but just submit the easiest one for you. So if the TOEFL testing center is near your house and you find it's the cheapest test available, do that test. If IELTS is the easiest and cheapest for you, do that test. There is no competitive advantage for one test over the other. So just do whichever is easiest and just do one. If you meet the minimum requirements, improving your score will have no impact on your admission. For English, for language requirements, it's a yes or no test. Do you have the minimum or no? It doesn't matter if you have the perfect score and another student has the minimum, they are treated the same in terms of language requirements, okay? So I will just point out this web page here. This is a page where you would go to find the specific requirements and the deadline for the program you are interested in. So if you have a program in mind, this is where you should go to find out those exact requirements. Now, as I've mentioned several times now, research is a big deal at the University of Ottawa. For many of our programs, you will be doing research. And in many cases, you need to find a professor to be your supervisor. So a supervisor is a professor who will guide you and support you and make sure that you are able to accomplish your individual research project or thesis. For many programs, you will need to find a supervisor before you submit your admissions application. So if you are interested in a PhD program in any subject, so all PhDs, you must have a supervisor before you submit your admissions application, all right? For some master's programs in sciences, medicine, engineering, a lot of these technical fields, those research-based master's programs must have a supervisor before you submit your admissions application. In a few cases, such as if you are doing a professional master's degree, that is a master's degree with no research, you do not need a supervisor. So I think that makes sense. If you're not doing research, you do not need a supervisor. However, if you're doing a research-based master's degree in art, social sciences, humanities, law, business, you will need a supervisor, but you do not need the supervisor in advance. In these cases, you simply submit your admissions application, and if you are admitted, when you arrive in Canada, in Ottawa, you will then start to meet personally with the professors to try and find a supervisor. So it's the order is shifted. You will find your supervisor after you are admitted for these special cases. So for those of you who do need to find a supervisor, I'm going to go over some tips here because finding a supervisor in advance is perhaps the most important step of your admissions application. It is probably the most time-consuming, and it is likely the most stressful step of the process. And it's the first step. So it's a big deal, and I know it can be overwhelming sometimes. So my first bit of advice is to take your time. The process of finding a supervisor, it can take several weeks. I often compare the process of finding a supervisor to the process of finding a job. Unless you're extremely lucky, you probably won't just apply for a job and get it the same day. Same thing with a supervisor. You probably won't find a supervisor in the very first day you start. When you are working to find a supervisor, take your time to do some research. Go on our website and look at the profiles. Read about the type of research they do, the type of publications, the type of thing that they do, and who is interesting to you. Then you will write a research statement that outlines your research interest. Explain what you want to do and why it might work with the professor that you find interesting. So if you are interested in doing a PhD in biology, you would go to our Faculty of Science website. You'd start looking around at the professors who are doing work in biology, and you would look at the type of research. Biology is a very big field, so they're not all going to be doing the same thing. If you find one or two professors who look interesting, they're doing interesting work to you and aligns with your interest, you can write them an email. When you email a professor, I strongly recommend keep it short and very clear. Do not write a long email talking about your childhood and your lifelong dreams. That's very nice, and I'm sure your professor would like to get to know you, but they are extremely busy. And during an initial email, you want to keep it short and to the point. I recommend introducing who you are, say where you're from, what you want to do in clear, short sentences. Include your CV, your transcripts of your grades. They can be unofficial. You don't need to pay money to send official transcripts yet. Just attach an unofficial results page. Include your language test score if you have it. If you don't worry. And this research statement, this document that describes what you want to research. Your research statement will probably be 1 or 2 pages, maybe a bit longer if you're looking for a PhD. This is all information that the professor will use to get an idea of who you are and what you want to do, and will be able to decide if he or she wants to accept you as a student. So if you are applying for a scholarship in your country, I know for some of you there are national scholarship programs that we through CALDO might have an agreement with. If you are applying for one of those scholarships, include that at the very beginning of your email. This will help get the attention of professors and make you very attractive. It's also okay to contact more than one professor at the same time. I know sometimes students are nervous about writing to multiple professors. That's understandable, but don't worry. The professors know how this process works. It's the same for international students. It's the same for Canadian students. They, as students, went through this process. They understand how that it's a bit of a competitive process. So it's okay to contact multiple professors at the same time, but do not send the same email to all the professors at the same time. If they see multiple email addresses in the 2-line altogether, they're likely not going to respond. So I do recommend write an individual customized email to each professor that you want to contact. Generally, I recommend contacting maybe 2 or 3 at a time. Some professors will say no. This is normal, and please don't take it as a personal insult. There are many reasons why professors might say no. Sometimes it's simply they already have too many students. They may be going on sabbatical and they can't take new students. They may find that your research interest does not align well with their work, and they may say no for that. You may be a great student, but if you are not a good match for their research area, they will still say no. And this is very normal, so don't worry if you get a no back from any professors. So very quickly, I'm just going to go through the timeline that you may be wondering about. Generally speaking, all of our programs will be available for intake in September every year. Many graduate programs, or master's or PhD programs, also allow you to start in January. However, it depends on the program. Some programs do not allow you to start in January. And occasionally, very rarely, but sometimes, it is possible to start in May. That's usually more of an option for PhD students. It's very, very rare that you can start a master's degree in May. Generally speaking, if you are intending to start in September, you would start your preparations about 1 year in advance. So if you are interested in starting in September 2021, you will start researching supervisors and submitting your application online around this coming September, September 2020. During the fall is when you'll be contacting supervisors, presenting your research interest, and trying to find someone who will accept you. And once you do find that supervisor, then you submit your application online. At that point, you will send your official documents. You'll have to send a few additional official documents, such as your transcripts from your previous studies, official language test results, Sometimes there's a few other official documents you will also need to send. This will all be done online, and you will be given the address and the correct information on how to send those. Usually by around January is when you want to make sure that your application is complete. And through kind of early new year is when you are going to be following your admission status in your university account. So once you apply online, you will be given a student number at the University of Ottawa, and you'll be given a password that will allow you to log into uOZone. It's our system for all our student services, and that's where you will see everything related to your admission process. You will also be given your admission response in your uOZone account. So you will get the results immediately electronically. You don't have to wait for a letter to arrive in the mail. Usually around April and May, this is when you will be, for most students, depending on your country, you will be preparing to apply for scholarships. Sometimes scholarships even in Canada, you will be applying around April and May. Sometimes you may have to gather additional support documents, explaining how much your tuition fees are, confirming your admissions, things like that. And this is also the time that you will be applying for your study permit and visa. And this is something that's done not through the university, but through the Embassy of Canada in your country, or whichever embassy covers your country. Usually in the late Canadian summer, you'll start to receive information, feedback about scholarships, any results from additional competitions that you applied for. If you do receive a scholarship or additional programming support for your studies, please do let us know. Sometimes students don't let us know, and this can cause problems and delays and additional fees. So it's best to if you are successful in any given activity, please let everyone know. It can really help coordination and make sure that things go smoothly. And then in September is when you would arrive. Hopefully you will arrive in person here in Ottawa and begin your studies. So that concludes my presentation about the process. Once again, my name on the screen there, Kyle Jorgensen Lane. Kyle is fine. You can contact me at sponsoredstudents@uottawa.ca if you'd like to get a hold of me and confirm or clarify anything that I talked about in this presentation.